Mariska with the Neuro Studio, and today I want to talk a little bit about AFOs, or ankle-foot orthoses. There are different reasons somebody might be wearing one. If somebody has damage to the peripheral nerve, which means like the nerve, like your peroneal nerve that lifts your foot up in dorsiflexion, somebody might need to wear an ankle-foot orthosis in their shoe to help their foot lift up during the swing phase of gait. You need to have a certain amount of dorsiflexion or flexion in your ankle to be able to lift your foot up when you're walking. A lot of times though, the people that I'm working with have foot drop from a central nervous system issue, in which case there's sort of a miscommunication from their brain to the muscles that lift their foot to help their foot lift up when they're walking. Now, in the case of a central nervous system problem, a lot of times it's actually very doable to get somebody to be able to walk without an AFO. Now the question is, when do you walk with one and when do you not walk with one? My theory is you try to walk with one as much, or without one as much as possible. You walk with one when you need to, or if it's really about like, are you not walking because you're so worried about tripping? So I have probably about 7 different AFOs. I have 3 of them here to talk about today. And I'm going to do a longer video just on like what are all the drawbacks and benefits of each different one and why would you choose one over another one. But when we're talking about central nervous system problems, we also want to talk about like what AFO can be helpful and what can like hinder your ability to be able to walk normally without one. So probably the most common type of AFO that I see people have are ones like this. This is the carbon fiber. It weighs literally nothing. I mean, I don't even know what this weighs, but practically nothing. And you slide it into your shoe and it kind of wraps around your shin. So if my foot was in a shoe, my foot would be here, it would be around my shin, but it's sort of a firm plate. So even though it has some flexibility in it, like it can bend like a little bit, there's almost no bend that's happening. So when you're walking, you don't get another part of the gait cycle that actually makes walking easier, especially when you have foot drop, which is push off of your foot that you're standing on. So if I'm walking, you flex your foot to ground your foot down, and then you want to be able to push off to get you energy to take your leg forward. This does not really help with that. It helps with you not tripping by catching your foot, your forefoot when you're walking. Also, it's really hard to walk downhill or in any way like downstairs because you can't land with the ball of your foot, which is how you would normally walk. There's also this type of AFO. I actually got this one from Amazon. I don't remember what it's called. Oh, it's called the Step Smart. One thing I like about this type, a little bit more than this type for myself in particular, is that first of all, it's got a little bit of a hinge to it. So it's got this little rubber thing in it. So when you're walking, it does allow your foot to have push off. It also is a half plate, which means when your foot is on the plate, the ball of your foot is able to be on the ground, which allows a really important part of walking called hoof off, or where you're pushing through the ball of your foot and you're going into big toe extension, because that's like another thing that can really help drive you forward. So my preference would be a foot drop brace like this over a foot drop brace like this, just because it allows a slightly more comfortable natural gait. There are other foot drop braces that have hinges on them, which also allow plantar flexion. Now, if you have, for instance, a foot drop that's a complete foot drop, like you literally can't lift your foot at all, because again, you have like nerve damage or it's really a much more severe central nervous system foot drop, sometimes you're going to want something that has a little bit more like this. And then this is a really cool thing. This is called a Walk-Aid. There's sort of 2 brands. There's a Walk-Aid and a Bioness. And what this does, and it only works for people who have an intact peroneal nerve, or the nerve that you want to use to lift your foot up, is when your tibia, so your shin bone, travels a certain degree over your ankle, it knows that you're about to come to the part of gait where your foot would flex. So it actually is E-stim, and it sort of zaps that muscle to make it contract, to make it easier to walk. Now this is going to give you the most natural gait if this works for you. This actually does not work for me because my foot drop also has sort of another complication which is where I have a lot of spasticity in the back of my calf. And I actually have sort of a joint contracture, so my ankle literally does not bend enough to get cleared dorsiflexion. So this one doesn't really work for me. All of that being said, these are all things that are super useful if it's going to make you walk more, but not actually useful in a big way to help you recover the ability to do the things that your body isn't doing when you have foot drop, which is getting better dorsiflexion, getting better range of motion in your ankle, having the ability to push off with your foot, which requires you to have strong intrinsic foot muscles, so the little tiny muscles of your feet, of which there are a lot of them, stronger calf muscles to again create that push off, the ability to bend your knee, which a lot of people who have foot drop don't have. They have a lot of tightness in their leg that makes their knee hard to bend. So where all these things are super useful, especially if they're going to get you walking, to actually get improvement, you need to do foot exercises, which are a little bit boring. We try to make them a little bit more fun at the Neuro Studio. You need to do leg strengthening exercises, hip stability exercises, all the other parts of walking to be able to get your walking better. I definitely am not 100% against these. I use them myself. I always travel with one because if you are like me and you have MS, you sort of don't know when it's all going to fall apart. So for me, having that there makes me feel more comfortable because I know I can have something to just put on and I won't be tripping when I'm walking. But my walking is going to feel a little bit weirder. Sometimes it makes my hip hurt, sometimes it makes my knee hurt, because again, it does change the biomechanics of how you walk. If you want to know more about foot exercises, ankle exercises, hip strengthening, we cover all of that on the Neuro Studio. I'll also talk a little bit more about all the different types of AFOs. I'll bring out the full collection so we can see what the different types are and why you might want to choose one over the other.